Hello and welcome to the AI First Show. This is the show where we talk about all things AI, industry gossip, latest models, all kinds of topics, most importantly, focusing on how you can get real work done with AI. We are with the Trilogy AI Center of Excellence. My name is Stephen Barr, my co-host Leonardo Gonzalez, and welcome everyone to the show.
Never a dull moment in AI. So
Yeah.
Definitely has been an exciting week, but there's been more than one thing. So that's why I figured, hey, let's talk about a few things.
Yeah, we'll dive into the full reaction video. So what we do, just for the new viewers of the show, I'm going to share my browser screen. For those of you, if you're just listening, if you are folding laundry or going for a run or walking your dog and have us in your pocket, we'll try and make it screen friendly, but there is stuff on the screen. So go and watch our stuff on YouTube or Instagram or LinkedIn when you can. But we'll be a lot of talking. We're going to talk about a headline. We're going to react to it. Leonardo and I have very different perspectives sometimes the same perspective, but that's all right. We're just going to go for it. We're going to see how this goes. Okay, so big news today. Andrej Karpathy, one of the famous pioneers of LLMs, I should say, quick, very short tweet for the size of the announcement. Said, personal update, I've joined Anthropic. I think the next few years at the frontier of LLMs will be especially formative. I'm very excited to join the team here and get back to R&D. I remain deeply passionate about education and plan to resume my work on it in time. Okay, this was the big news of the week. Leo, what's been your take? How are people reacting to this?
You joined Anthropic.
Oh boy. Okay.
People, and I shared it in our company group chat, and a lot of people were excited. They thought this is a great thing. Everybody's going to win from this. My perspective on Anthropic is that they haven't been the best toward the developer ecosystem or even their customer base. So it's usually hard for me to root for them, but always open to them improving and changing for sure. My main reaction was, aside from shock, wondering why? Wonder what's happening there.
Well, I'm sure there's like an 8-digit number of reasons why.
I heard that there was a 6-figure salary per hour.
That's incredible if true.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. You hear all kinds of rumors. Speculation that I saw, and I saw one of the reaction posts, was that it was about access. Tired of being on the sidelines. It's funny because, I don't know, a while back, I remember somebody asking him, why aren't you at a major lab when the AI revolution is happening? What are you doing? And a lot of people thought it's better that he's independent. It's better that he's not working for a big lab. That allows him to share knowledge more freely. It allows him to focus on his passion for education. It seemed like he wants to create something similar to the Parlina project I've been envisioning, of having some AI native, interactive, multimodal education experience, but I haven't seen any activity on that front from his side. I have seen him sharing ideas and a lot of people being excited about anything that he shares. So obviously, one big concern is how open, especially being at a company that is not known to be open in many of its philosophies or perspectives, is his continued work going to be? Is it going to be research? Is it going to be thought leadership that is going to influence people? Or is it going to be internal product development? It's hard to tell.
I think my perspective on Anthropic, I would say, now tell me this might be fair or not. They're, in a sense, they're like Ferrari. Now, Ferrari, the company, they do all kinds of snobbish things, right? You can't just buy the best Ferrari. Say you're a rags to riches person. You finally got your tech IPO. You want to buy the best Ferrari there is. You can't. You have to get in line. You got to buy the lower end models first. You got to prove your loyalty to the brand. And undoubtedly, they put together a great product, but they're a snobbish company. Now, yeah, clearly Opus is great. Is it the absolute best in every way? No, not necessarily. Neither is Ferrari the best car in every single way. It's still respectable, obviously, still a leader. And so you'd think, okay, I would try to think of a tech equivalent to this. And it would be like if Linus Torvalds joined Red Hat back in its heyday. What would that have been like? And I'm sure he's gotten plenty of offers from big Linux players over the years to do that, and it never did. But that being said, I do have, we're all human beings. It'd be nice to have a private jet and an island, or not an island, that's passe now, but a private jet and all kinds of cool stuff you can do with actual money. So I don't blame anybody for if that's handed to them or put in front of them to actually have that. So I guess we'll have to see where this goes.
Yeah, it's definitely going to make it more appealing for Anthropic from a cultural standpoint. Like, it's really good for their branding.
Yeah, this is a huge win for them. And even if he doesn't do anything for them, right, this is still a huge win for them. Let's see, just pulling up the Hacker News comments here. Like, there was a ton of engagement on Hacker News. Let me pull up the story here. Let's see, share this tab. Big talent win for Anthropic. Karpathy is one of those people who's working on AI before it became a thing. Here's the overall post. 613 comments, 1,422 points, saying he's starting on the pre-training team, so responsible for massive training runs. Yeah, so we'll see. So maybe this will be a huge, big leap forward, and he's got some stuff in his brain that he just can't wait to implement, and he'll finally have the resources, or maybe it's just a name thing for Anthropic. Ooh, time will tell. All right, yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. No, he can absolutely contribute anywhere he's going to be, just how they want to utilize him. All right, next story. This is one that you brought to my attention. XAI, you can now use X Premium subscriptions in Hermes Agent, and Hermes Agent can now search X posts. So this is Hermes, the biggest competitor to OpenClaw. It's been gaining a lot of traction recently. What do you think of this story? Why are we talking about this one?
Well, a couple of reasons. One, I think that XAI is often an underappreciated or like an underdog. I still think that they're pretty behind on coding. They're trying to catch up with a new coding agent, Grok build, but they definitely have some catching up to do there. But they have this subscription that you can get through Grok that gives you access to plenty of use. And people often don't think of it like, hey, that's an option. That's an option that I could plug in along with all the other subscriptions that are out there. People think about, well, there's OpenAI and there's Anthropic, Claude Code subscription. There's the Chinese ones with the GLM coding plan with Kimi, with Quen, but there's another one. What's interesting is that they've been very anti-bot on the X platform. It's a huge problem on X. It's a huge problem everywhere. It's really a problem on LinkedIn. It's funny, I recently saw someone post a comment of, hey, LinkedIn is basically Moltbook. You know, it's basically just bots commenting everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really good. That's really funny.
Yeah. But so on X, there's all these automated reply guy comments, and anybody that with good following and engagement, they get their comments just inundated by bots. I think they're starting to combat that on the monetization side so that there's less incentive to do that. But it's definitely affecting the signal to noise ratio. And so for X to come out and say, hey, use our subscription for a bot, for an agent, it's interesting. And not only that, but and then have your bot use the X API. Ostensibly, this might be for read-only use. We'll have to see what the parameters are. Obviously, if it can be used for posting, that would be a bad thing. It would probably be a net negative. Yeah, but for reading, I was telling you yesterday, man, I'm struggling with my X bookmarks. It's very buggy. If I click into a bookmark from a folder and I go back, it scrolls, it changes the order. So
X mining data is expensive. That's like thousands of dollars. If you want the fire hose, I think it's like $5,000 a month at last time I checked.
It's an outrageously highly priced API. And originally I didn't understand why. Then they said this is actually to dissuade automation, and now they're wanting to encourage automation. So most people that I saw responding to this, their reaction was, what? They were just confused. This was very unexpected. But it's interesting. I think they're seeing that it's hard to go against the grain here. It's also interesting that they're supporting Hermes agent specifically, probably because of the feud between Elon Musk and OpenAI, and the fact that OpenAI hired the OpenClaw creator. I don't know, that's conjecture, but they very much are specifically saying use it with Hermes agent, not with OpenClaw.
It's funny. I think that some, like you said earlier, some people underestimate Grok, overlook it, and it's probably some people see its association with Elon Musk, and they're not, for whatever you think of Elon Musk, it doesn't mean you write off every last thing. There's like, there's a lot of other people working on Grok. It's not like he's the only person there. So I personally, I think it's a little bit foolish to write off an entire model just because of one person. Yeah, definitely pay attention to Grok. Actually, I wanted to put this on the Hermes side. I just saw this by Network Chuck. Said you need to use Hermes right now. Goodbye, OpenClaw. He just published this. I really like his opinions on some things. So this is a long form video. I want to watch it and see what he thinks to understand his perspective on it. But definitely Hermes itself is gaining traction. And so the X Grok integration might be a cool way to use it, especially if you're already X Premium. Okay, next story. We got to keep going here. I think this could be a 3-hour episode if we're not careful. So I'm going to keep pushing us along here. Okay, next story. This was a discovery by the Developing Adventures Twitter account saying OpenAI is quietly building real-time voice mode into Codex. You talk, the model talks back. A background agent does the actual coding while it narrates. They found some Rust in the repo that is building out all the details for this. There's some screenshots here about how it could work. So I think this is a good thing, right? It's saying there's a feature in the works that's coming. There's a bit of news coverage about it. OpenAI Codex. Let's see. You shared me an article by femex.com saying OpenAI Codex develops real-time voice mode for enhanced AI programming. There's even the pull request here, add a voice input mode. That's from a while ago, but there's still commentary on it as of now. So what do you think? Do you use voice mode on a regular basis, or do you anticipate using this with Codex? I know you're a Codex fan. Yeah. Do you anticipate using the voice mode?
Well, and this will be really interesting, dovetailing with the next item, which is a kind of an AI pointer developed by Google. It's just like looking at new kinds of user interfaces. I love using voice mode with ChatGPT. If I'm on my phone, I hate typing with my thumbs. I have large fingers, I guess. I don't know. But I have a terrible experience typing on my phone. I hate typing on my phone. So I like having a conversation with ChatGPT. And it just is very good for free-flowing ideas. Sometimes I wonder about its ability to use tools and its reasoning effort in voice mode versus typing. I have suspicions that these things are dialed down for the sake of real-time interactivity. But yeah, that's been my main voice input use case. I don't use voice mode on the computer. I generally type with all 10 fingers. But if we can start to reimagine how or what we do, where it's less of giving these specific instructions with file paths and commands and things, and we're talking more abstractly and we're brainstorming or we're thinking out loud quite literally, I think these kinds of things are more suited for voice interaction. I think one interesting thing that is happening with Codex, and this is something that they've come out and said explicitly, is this merging of and Codex.
I completely agree with you that they're dialed down. Like I like to talk to Perplexity when I'm like on a long drive by myself and I want to learn something. I think it's great. I'm doing some language learning exercises and asking it to explain the structure in the other language that I'm working on. I really like that. I do agree that they're dialed down because I've asked it some complicated questions before that would require a bit of synthesis of news sources, and it kept interrupting itself. It kept starting over and making a response and then deleting it and then trying it again. So I do think that they like having the background agent and a better handover between the really smart agent and the voice mode is going to be good. I'm thinking like every single science fiction show that features a computer in the future, you talk to it, right? That is like a universal truth.
Computer? Computer. Hello, computer.
Just use the keyboard.
How quaint.
Yes, that is a classic scene, Star Trek 4. They've gone back to the 80s. The famous engineer, Mr. Scott, is sitting at a Mac Classic. And if those of you looking on audio only, he holds the mouse and starts talking into it like it's some kind of like a walkie-talkie.
Yeah. Just yesterday, somebody was talking about, the future doesn't have graphical user interfaces. Everything's going to be a chat box. And I replied, like, what, you think people are still going to want to type? Where, a lot of people like to think, obviously, there's things that are better written, but there are things that you can say out loud much faster and much more easily. One thing I'm really interested in, as I was mentioning, is this integration of ChatGPT and Codex. At some point, there's going to be a super app that's going to be both, right? We're already seeing on the mobile app, ChatGPT app has a Codex tab, and it has a remote control, so you can connect to your computer even if it's locked and the screen is off, and you can control your Codex harness from your phone. And I see these suggestions of things to work on when I open Codex that are based on my ChatGPT conversations or emails if I have it connected. So it's like the ChatGPT Prism, where it looks at context and new events and tries to suggest things proactively. So I do think that it's going to be interesting to explore a new UX that is conversational, that is proactive, that is mobile or cross-device. And it's good. It's keeping us on our feet. It's not the same old. So we have the opportunity to reimagine how we interface and how we do our workflows.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of whisper flow, where I'm at my computer and sometimes I just want to just have a stream of consciousness. If I'm typing a quick half sentence, I'll just type it. But I've got it set up now, so just hit Control-Alt. I've always got my microphone on and ready. And so I've tried to replace typing. And a lot of times I'm just tabbing between a lot of different windows, Control-Alt on this open code, on this open code, on this Codex, on this whatever, and just dumping thoughts into each one. And it does feel a lot faster. So, but it does take some... I do like I've got a nice keyboard with these cherry keys, and I like taking out some energy on the keys sometimes. And voice mode does not have that viscerality yet.
I wouldn't write off writing, pun intended. I feel like there's value in writing, like journaling, and the physical act of writing, maybe by hand, but maybe also on the keyboard. And part of it is the fact that you write slower than you think. And I think of like a kid that's riding a bike and a parent that's walking along them, and the kid's just riding in circles around the parent. That's how I think of the thought process, like circling around the process of writing, or the fact that you have to write a little bit slower allows you to refine your thoughts or somehow crystallize them. I think there's value in writing, and I don't think we should throw writing out the window as this is last century's UX. But I think that allowing free-form thought and brainstorming and conversations, especially as more and more interfaces are conversational in nature, where you express your intent and your objectives in a narrative way, I think it's going to definitely be a good thing, as long as we still allow maybe more critical thinking and the kinds of cognition and reflection that writing provides.
100% agree. And there's plenty of times where I should be rate limited, right? Now, if I'm speaking as fast as my brain can think, there's plenty of crap that comes out. And there's times for the yellow notepad, the Zebra F402, and the glass of whiskey. And I think that's exactly because you're being thoughtful and it's not just a stream of consciousness. So there's a place for all of them. Okay, next story is from Google DeepMind. You'd already given a preview to. I want to just share. We've got the audio.
The mouse pointer is something that has been forgotten. What if behind the pointer there was an AI model like Gemini trying to interpret whatever we're saying like another person would? The way we actually made this work in our initial prototype was by saying keywords like this, that, here, or there. Could you get those two ingredients and also this one, add them to my shopping list here?
Done.
We can really have the pointer dig through all of the layers of data. We can have voice, we can have text, we can have image understanding. Can you make this 8 p.m.?
I've updated the draft to start at 8 p.m.
And then have Gemini write code to satisfy the user intent whenever they're moving their pointer across different apps.
Here are the directions between the two locations.
It's really magical what you can do when we mix voice and pointing and visual understanding at the same time. The mouse.
Okay, this is cool. I wrote down some of my initial thoughts on this. It looks really cool, and I hope it's not vaporware. But my initial thought is that in order to get this to work, I use a touchpad, and I'm really fast with it. And so if I lassoed something with my mouse, that could be in the order of 300 milliseconds. And so you have to understand, okay, where was my cursor when I said something? And me saying something is going to take longer than 300 milliseconds. And you have to line that up. If I'm looking at the map, like, dude, I said, give me the location between here and here. That's not a lot of time. This has to be really precise to get that to work. That being said, I hope they pull it off because that would be cool. What was your thought on this?
Again, I love the idea of disrupting our UX paradigms. It's ripe for disruption. The mouse was something that revolutionized computing when we used terminals and everything was just typing. And all of a sudden, we have a graphical user interface. And this happened, in the 80s, I think? And we haven't really had a revolution in UX since on that level of a step transformation. And here's a completely different way to have inputs and outputs. And I feel like this could be really interesting. Yesterday, I gave a workshop in the office hours for this new paradigm that is emerging of HTML as a really hot thing for agent output. And somewhere else, I remember seeing somebody talking about how, hey, humans are really wired for visual input, and that's a really good way for agents to communicate with us is visually. But we're really good at talking. We like to talk. And so this goes back to the previous item too, is a really good input for agents is audio. So I think interesting combinations of visual and auditory inputs and outputs are good things to explore. Yesterday, I was showing something that's blowing my mind, which is the creation of decks using an agent harness without Google Slides or PowerPoint. You just have it make HTML that's editable in the browser so you can change words and then you can render a PDF from there. And I said, well, there's only one imperfection here, and that's you can edit the text really easily, but you can't change the images and the layout. You can't drag and resize and do things like that. Maybe with some tweaks to the HTML you could. But then I said the whole point is I want to get away from clicking and pointing and dragging stuff. Otherwise, I might as well be using Google Slides in the first place. What I want is to be able to say what I want. And so I could point to something and say, hey, change this or make this bigger because I remembered seeing this. So I think that's a really interesting paradigm of being able to express yourself based on the context of what you have in your workflow, in your workspace, and being able to say this when you're pointing at something. It seems silly, but I think that really could be transformative. I saw somebody do like an open source version of this. I need to try it out and see how well it works. It was based on KUA, which is computer use agent, which I tried a while back and was like really not very performant. But hopefully, depending on the model, it'll work better. So we'll see. Very excited to see. All the stuff is very emerging and very new and very early, but I think it's going in the right direction. So I think it's good to be aware of it.
I wanted to share one cultural reference in terms of UIs that I think we're all, as tech people, this was one of the pivotal UIs of the one possible future. So I wanted to share this real quick.
Why? No tax returns for the last 5 years.
Check NCIC. Maybe he's got a record. And send a protection team as soon as we lock location. It looks like federal housing, concrete and glass egg crates.
So this is one of the classic sci-fi UIs where you see Tom Cruise has these finger tracking gloves and he's got this big display and he's talking, he's moving things, he's swiping things. I think what's going to be really interesting in the future is that we can have the core piece of data and we can have each person use it in a way that works for them, right? You might like some giant infographic and I might like, I don't know, a pamphlet. And we can have a real-time translation of this is what works for you, this is what works for me. Here's what the core information being conveyed is. And we can almost have this like translation layer into what works for each of us individually. Because maybe you just like reading JSON by hand. You don't even like a UI, right? Like, who knows? Everyone's different. Okay.
The human-computer interface, the HCI space, has been dynamic. I remember playing with a Nintendo glove. I remember having an Xbox that could track my hand gestures. And there was even some experimental device that I probably have sitting in some drawer somewhere where it could read the muscle movements in my wrists. So depending on different like finger combinations and rotations, I could change a PowerPoint slide. But all these things are like very hardware intensive. And it's like the original virtual reality goggles that were like strap on a giant thing. Like the lighter the form factor, the less disruptive it is to your workflows and to your physical encumberment, the better. So I think starting with what people are already used to, which is the mouse, and then adding layers of modality to that talking, I think is a very low barrier to entry disruption.
Completely agree. So it'll be cool to see how that evolves. I hope Google can pull it off or some other group similar. All right. Next article, just to save time. Here is, I forgot to close the tab. Dawn Song, can AI turn security vulnerabilities into real attacks? They're saying this is the most critical task for measuring the impact of frontier AI on cybersecurity. And the key here is Mythos, right? So that is, they're saying Claude Mythos Preview has found all of these different attack vectors, attack surfaces. Same with GPT-5, GPT-4. They've got this underlying blog post / paper. Can AI agents turn security vulnerabilities into real attacks? So there is, this is security research. Let's see, UC Berkeley, collaboration with Max Planck for security and privacy, UC Santa Barbara, ASU, Anthropic, OpenAI, and Google. So basically, the idea is the working question: how good are today's AI agents at turning known software vulnerabilities into working exploits? So things like buffer overflow, any kind of vulnerability, can you actually use it to exploit it? And I think what was found is yes, they can. And GPT 5.5 can, Mythos can, Opus didn't do as well. So it seems like this is at the frontier, right? Opus 4.6 did not do very well, but GPT 5.5 was like an order of magnitude better. Yeah. So I guess that's saying this is where the frontier is in terms of abilities of frontier models. So I don't know, what's your read on this? Is this a big deal? Is this just vapor?
No, this is very interesting. Dawn Song runs the Agentic AI MOOC at UC Berkeley, which was what I based my previous cohort of AI engineering students that I led, where we participated along with tens of thousands of people around the world in looking at some really good material from industry leaders across the main players in the space. So there's a lot of good work coming out of this organization, the Berkeley RDI, and they've come out with things like CyberGym, which were cybersecurity benchmarking environments. And so ExploitGym is an evolution of that, where there's a huge gap and disconnect between being able to identify a vulnerability and being able to effectively create an exploit for it. And that gap is the reason why purportedly Mythos has been restricted and access withheld from the general public because of the concern that people would actually use this to exploit. And so this is why they have Project Glasswing with early adopters, where only selected couple dozen enterprises have access to it to fix their house before the world at large has access to models this powerful. This proved that there was indeed an order of magnitude level of difference between Opus 4.7 and Claude Mythos. However, it also highlighted that GPT 5.5 was really close. And GPT 5.5 is very cheap compared to Mythos and is publicly available. So this definitely is a kink in the narrative, or begs the question of, hey, a lot of people speculated that Mythos was restricted not because it was a danger to civilization, but because compute was limited, or because it created manufactured scarcity and made people like Karpathy want to join so they could have access to it,
Yeah, well, and every boardroom is like, how do we get Mythos? How do we get Mythos, right? Yeah. I just saw this article. I think my perspective on this, and I want to go back to a funny story. So when I was 11 years old, we were big tech early adopters at my house, and our ISP gave us an entire Class C network. Like, we had all of 209.20.218. I still remember. And me, as an 11-year-old kid, had my own personal Windows 95 box that had a public IP address. Okay? Like, wow. Imagine the security risks. And I had a friend of mine who was a bit of he went by Lord Jolt, and he was an aspiring script kiddie. And he would say, hey, give me your IP address. I bet I can make your computer reboot from my house. And I gave it to him, and he typed something in, and my computer crashes and reboots. And it's okay. That was insane. The Wild West of that time. Like, the idea that you could have a personal workstation, a Windows workstation with an open telnet on the public internet was insane. But overall, things got better. And there's enough people like wanting things to get better. And then we came up with stuff like NAT and firewalls and better policies. I think we have a couple more security related stories that we're going to highlight. There's definitely work that needs to be done. And there's always this arms race between exploits and just being secure. But we will figure this out over time. I don't think it's going to be one of those things where computing is going to become impossible because there's just so many bad actors out there. But we'll definitely have to learn more and be smarter. And yeah, I think it'll get a bit adversarial for a while. I think, to give a preview of the next section, we're all going to laugh at ourselves that we can give any package maintainer in the world the ability to execute code on our boxes. Like, yeah, that's insane. What were we all thinking? But now we'll figure it out.
Yeah. And this will connect to some things later in our segment for sure. But it is interesting to look at things that are new that we haven't run into before. This is like reimagining UX. We have to reimagine all kinds of things. And part of it is security posture, and part of it is policy around access to intelligence or access to models that have certain capabilities, or how do we protect ourselves, or how do we protect a society from these risks. And I don't think that withholding models is the answer, but it's a really complex set of issues that doesn't have a simple solution.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's not an easy answer. And there is, in the security world today, there is this concept of responsible disclosure, where some people, if they find an exploit, they're not just going to go run and publish it immediately. And there's incentives in place for why you wouldn't want to do that. So that's all to say, I think there's a balance to be struck, right? Don't publish your exploit immediately. But that being said, it's not like the end of computing as we know it. There's always going to be an alarmist faction, but I don't think that they're accurate in this case. All right, let's take a quick break for a second. When we come back, we have a couple more security stories. We've got a fake honeypot. We've got AI layoffs. We've got a piece of art that may have been generated by Monet or maybe AI. We're going to have to tell. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back. All right, we're back from the break. We've got another security-related story. This is from the GitHub blog saying, investigating unauthorized access to GitHub-owned repositories. So I'll just read the first couple sentences here. May 18th, we detected and contained a compromise of an employee device involving a Poison VS Code extension published by a third party. We removed the malicious extension version, isolated the endpoint, and began incident response immediately. Our current assessment is that the activity involved exfiltration of GitHub internal repositories only. The attacker's current claims of 3,800 repositories are directionally consistent with our investigation so far. Let's see. So they're still looking into it, still investigating it. They've rotated their secrets Monday and Tuesday with the highest impact credentials prioritized first. So this is interesting. So this came from a poisoned VS Code extension. So then let's see, there's some other kind of supplementary one. This is called Team PCP. I'll share this article on the ox.security blog. Team PCP strikes again, how a Trojan VS Code extension brought down GitHub. And they have a much longer write-up. Let's see, immediate actions. Rotate your keys, 2FA on your accounts. Remove the malicious extension and treat the machine along with any connected tokens, environment variables, and API keys as compromised. So this is for NX Console.
Yeah, so NX Console was the VS Code extension that was compromised by Team PCP. Team PCP are the threat actors behind all these supply chain attacks over the last several months that resulted in Trivy and like LLM and all kinds of things being compromised and creating havoc and mayhem across the world. And what's interesting here is that it's not an NPM package, it's a VS Code extension. So we have to expand our awareness of our attack surface beyond installing packages from a package manager to an extension. Now, this applies to browser extensions, but VS Code extensions. These are things that we install. We think, oh, they come from someone that's a known entity. Obviously, you should be wary of installing random extensions from random people. But these known entities can also be compromised. The way that Team PCP works is they attack the supply chain. So they attack maintainers of packages and to now extensions so that they'll put a compromised version in place so that people then install those. And then that has some malicious payload that exfiltrates data or credentials. And this is why it becomes a worm, because if it infects somebody that is in turn a package maintainer or extension developer, then it can allow their thing to be compromised and then spread its impact. So one interesting thing here was the fact that it was a different attack surface. It was a VS Code extension. And the other is that it was GitHub. So GitHub itself was hacked. 4,000 internal repositories. This was put on the black market for kind of a silly low price of $50,000, which apparently GitHub didn't just pay. And so it's on the open market. Whoever wants to buy a GitHub code.
That's so wild. I was looking at the security write-up here on this. I'll share this one. It's interesting to see. So they took over this person, Zachary DeRose, found one of his access tokens, pushed a commit to this that they said it was not on a tree. It's not reachable from any branch. It's just a orphan commit with, if you know the SHA, you can access it. And it replaces the entire NX mono repo with this dependency on Bun and uses Bun APIs. The Bun NPM package installs the Bun runtime, giving the payload its execution environment. So it just opens up this attack vector. It's planting your flag on whatever computer has this. All of a sudden, you've got the surface. You can start executing whatever you want. Very interesting attack. And it comes down to, again, you're only as secure as like your weakest link, right? You think that in every single kind of security science fiction, it's like, we're going to break the encryption algorithm. It's no, we're going to lock the janitor in a closet and threaten him with a wrench until he hands us the keys. There's an XKCD about this, right? It was just one random maintainer leaked one access token, and that was their into the supply chain.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is interesting. We will keep going. I think we've got another security related one. I'm going to share this tab. Mini Shay Halud. What is this one? What? I've never heard of this. I don't know what or who Shay Halud is. So, what is this?
This is by the same threat actor. This is Team PCP. And this is the main thing that's been wreaking havoc recently. So Shai Hulud is the name of that giant worm from Dune.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So they call it Mini Shai Hulud. And it's a worm in a sense because of what I explained. Their operations target package maintainers so that they can compromise packages and infiltrate the supply chain of other package maintainers. And that's why this has not really been contained. And we've been seeing these supply chain attacks for months, and they don't seem to be slowing down. This is a particularly nasty one where it was like some kind of visualization libraries, and it basically got so much penetration and it spread so quickly. It caused, I think, 327 packages to deploy 600 compromised versions over the course of 25 minutes or something like that. And even though these things are short-lived, some of them are like really popular packages, and so they get downloaded hundreds of thousands of times or tens of thousands of times, and there's real impact. Who knows how many API keys have been leaked at this point? But this was a particularly nasty one. We've seen that people are recommending minimum age for NPM and for PyPy, because this is spread beyond NPM, which is the node package manager for JavaScript, TypeScript node. That's like where it primarily operates. But now it has affected enough package maintainers that maintain Python packages that it now affects the Python ecosystem. And you have to be careful about installing Python packages as well. And both of those package managers allow you to say, hey, don't install anything newer than 7 days ago. And that's some basic protection. It prevents you from getting a recent fix, but it also prevents you from getting a recent compromised version that they're usually pretty quick to get yanked within a few hours or so.
Yeah, I think that we're going to have to start having upper bounds on all the packages, right? You always think have a lower bound because you want to make sure it has this new feature. You want to have upper bounds too, so you don't just get the newest thing automatically. Because for most people, you don't need the newest version. You can wait a week.
Yeah. And people are saying maybe you should statically pin your versions. Only this version.
I think that's
only upgrade if you need to, if something is broken. The problem with that is there's all kinds of new vulnerabilities that come out all the time. So you have to constantly be on top of keeping your things up to date with security updates. And that's the tension of you can't just leave it and forget it. You need to keep it up to date with security updates, but you can't just update to the latest version because that exposes you to vulnerabilities in the supply chain.
Yeah, that's the trade-off, right? The bleeding edge, you're protected, but you're also exposed.
Yeah, there's another trade-off too, which is there are solutions for mediating the package installation process and checking against the database. The most well-known one is Socket. And so you can do a Socket firewall. And apparently Team PCP did an interview where they answered the question, how can people protect themselves from you? And they said, pin your versions, and Socket would have caught this. And their CEO posted, oh my God, we're not going to put this on our testimonials, but look, right? And people are saying, that's kind of suspect. I even replied and said, well, isn't there some universe where Socket gets compromised and then malicious versions of all packages get distributed to all their customers? It's kind of using a third-party password manager where it's, okay, this is maybe safer than alternatives, but that's also an external single point of failure. So
eggs in one basket. I use a third-party password manager, but I'm aware this is an enormous single point of failure. Look what it's looking for. This is very greedy. GitHub token, personal access token, AWS credentials, HashiCorp Vault. Let's see, Kubernetes service account tokens and namespace secrets. and
password.
one
Talking
password.
about third-party password managers.
Well, it's really going for everything. Then looks for GitHub Actions Runner. Yeah, my Actions Runner have all kinds of great secrets, API keys. And then it does an HTTPS request to an encrypted C2 domain to get that data out of there and into whatever domain this happens to be. So basically, yeah, exfiltrating tokens, credentials, all kinds of stuff. This is, you would not want to have to deal with this. I guess what you really want to know how to do is rotate all your keys quickly. If you had to rotate your keys quickly, and I was thinking about some of my API keys are in a lot of different places. And like,
yeah. One of these were particularly nasty, where once you were infected, if they detected that you revoked your token, then it would wipe your machine.
yeah. Oh man. Security, it'll always be a thing. It'll always be an issue. Okay, we got to keep going. There's so much more to cover. All right, next post. This is really clever. Made a fake repo with fake bounties, and the bots are applying fake PRs so we know who's fake, and we can ban them from the Coolify repo. This is a great idea. So it's like fake GitHub repo where there's cash prizes for fixing these bugs. And of course, the AI agents are going after these. They have got a list of agents who have submitted PRs, and they're going to ban these. I think this is really clever. Yeah, this.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. We've seen and we've talked about on this show several times the onslaught of AI slop in PRs. And what makes them slop is that they're low effort and they're low quality. And we've talked about slop in general, content having these characteristics of low effort and low quality. And this thing became viral where some guy said, oh my gosh, Codex made money for me. I asked it to make money for me, and it did some open source bounty things. And this guy is obviously non-technical, and he's come out and said, I didn't give it a fancy prompt. I don't know how it does it. I just said, make me money. And so there's people doing that level of blind, hey, submit a PR, give me a bounty. And they're not engineers. They don't have criteria with which to understand the impact or the quality of the code. The models and the harnesses that are doing this don't have the orchestration and verification systems in place to make sure that the scope is limited, that the quality is high, that they're not introducing other issues. So these automated AI PRs are crap. And open source maintainers are drowning in them. They can't tell the signal from the noise. So a lot of them have had to shut off open contributions because of that. So this has come to the extreme point where now we have PR honeypots so that we can detect these automated low effort, low quality PRs and say, oh, here's a bot, add them to the block list.
There is an interesting idea from the Gastown folks, and I don't know what the status of it is right now. I'm going to share this page. It's called The Wasteland, and their idea is that you can curate your own, what they call gas city. And so that's like an AI agent orchestration. So maybe you've curated yours to be really good at Haskell or C++ or CUDA. And then you can actually build up a reputation on this thing. And so they have a reputation leaderboard. And so if you post tasks out there to get done, say you say, okay, I want to write a CUDA kernel for this particular thing. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to direct my agent, but maybe one of these other agents is, so they can claim it. And then there's a whole validation mechanism. And the idea is that your agents can build up a global reputation for contributing to other people's stuff. And so I think this is what it's going to have to come down to. It's just like people with LinkedIn, there's going to be agentic reputation. So you have to say, okay, before you can submit a PR, I'm only going to take reputation 50 people, or whatever it is, people who've done more than 100 stamps. And just like a lot of these human to human markets, what makes them work is reputation management, right? Do you go to an Airbnb with 1 star? Maybe, but it sure feels better if they're a superhost.
No, this is a very interesting problem. We saw recently with Archive, which is the most popular scientific preprint archive, They had to take some measures. They asked people to be vetted before they can publish. And so they needed like a referral from someone. And now they've taken an additional step where if they detect that you haven't even looked at your references, if you hallucinated your citations and your references and you didn't even bother to check them, then they will punish you. They will ban you. And people were up in arms about that. It's ridiculous that you would expect to be able to cite references that don't exist and that you would be bothered to say, I can't be expected to read the references that I'm citing.
Oh, I'm glad that in the legal field, you get sanctioned by or disbarred if you did that more than once, I think. Where like, let me cite this case that doesn't actually exist. And people have tried that, unfortunately, right? People, they or their paralegals take a shortcut and try to cite a case that doesn't exist. Yeah, that's not going to work. So I think fair point. Okay, we got to keep going. We're only 2/3 of the way through. All right, we're going to keep going. Okay, next one. Zeb Evans, CEO of ClickUp. They reduced headcount by 22%. I think it was a good post for the sake of transparency. As a business owner, reducing headcount sucks, right? Each person's an individual. They work for you, but you become friends. It's like when you lay someone off, it sucks. And I think that he knows this. So I think it was good of him to say, I made this decision and I own it. He said this wasn't about cutting costs. They will be introducing $1 million salary bands. If you create outsized impact using AI, you'll be paid outside of traditional bands. This is interesting. I see two options. Wait for this to play out gradually in the market or be honest about what I'm seeing and act proactively. They are working on building what's called the 100x org. Goal is 100x output. The roles required to build at the highest level are fundamentally different than they were a year ago. So yeah, this is interesting. What we validated recently at ClickUp, great engineers, the ones who can orchestrate, architect, and review are becoming 100x engineers. They're not writing code, they're directing agents that write code. The skill is judgment. AI makes the best engineers wildly more productive, and everyone else using AI slows these engineers down. The bottlenecks are 1, orchestration, telling AI what to do, and 2, reviewing what AI did. Everything is leapfrogged and no longer needed. Who do you want orchestrating and reviewing code? And how do you want the best engineers spending your time? The new world is about enabling and your 10x engineers to become 100x. The wrong strategy is to push every engineer to use infinite tokens. So what do we think about this? It's a bold post. I think that there's a lot more to it. So we can't
What's interesting, especially in contrast to the next thing that maybe we'll cover, is it had mixed reviews. It had positive reviews in addition to negative reviews, which it's a tough crowd when you're doing layoffs. It's going to be hard to have anybody view what you're saying or doing in a positive light, especially when it's not like you were forced to. It's not that, oh, this was an emergency measure because of a fiscal need. But he has an interesting point of not having your blinders on. And just because you're not forced to do it now doesn't mean you should be myopic and not think about what's coming later. And having your hand forced may be something that happens when you have a longer horizon.
And that is a shitty way of operating, is when you have to. And I've been there, right? Mm-hmm. I think everyone's been there at some point in your life where you're like, okay, I have to move. I have to sell this thing. It sucks. And so being proactive when you've still got some bandwidth to see how the decision plays out.
And another reaction that I saw was like saying, oh, this is a Hunger Games, right? This is a company-wide Hunger Games. And this is something I've experienced where there's a little culture of competition and you have to prove your worth and you have to make it and survive. And that can be unnerving. But I've also been on the other side of that as an entrepreneur where you don't want to be carrying dead weight. You want some semblance of ownership, of responsibility, of you got to carry your weight. So I understand that. And I understand being proactive in that sense, where there's an expectation that we need to adapt for the new reality and the upcoming reality. What is also interesting from the other perspective is that there's this expectation now you're expected to be a 10x engineer. You're going to expected to be a 100x engineer. So we thought that AI was going to make us work less. And now, we're seeing that AI is making it so that we're expected to produce 100 times more, which is an interesting kind of a flip side of that coin. I'm all for it. I'm all for increasing 100x, my productivity. I'm excited about that. But it is interesting to see that as a reflection of not just the utopia that we're sold of, AI is going to make us so productive that we won't have to work. It's going to raise the bar of the expectation so that we're going to be expected to produce orders of magnitude more.
I think I agree with you. And I feel like, okay, this is going to be a little bit, I feel like we are a bunch of cavemen arguing about, should we invest in this fire thing? I just rubbed two sticks together and it's really warm and I'm cooking meat and it's pretty nice. Should we keep going down this path or not? It's like, yes, the returns from fire are really good. So keep going. And I feel like, yes, it would suck for the people who got displaced whenever fire got invented, and whatever they were doing beforehand was less relevant. But yes, invest in knowing how to do this. In more real terms of right now, orchestration. Yeah, I think that everyone should be investing in this. You just onboarded me onto Open Symphony, looking at Gas City, looking at all kinds of different orchestration frameworks to get agents to do work for you. I think that that's knowing how to do that is the next superpower. So personal advice to everyone watching this is to invest in your ability to do that. And it is not a solved problem.
Yeah. And I think there's a right way and a wrong way to do it and to communicate about it, and the timing and the manner in which it is done, which I think is a good segue to the next story.
All right, here, let's put it on the screen. AI and design. I'm not going to lie. The Meta layoffs are some of the most dystopian I've ever seen. They got told to work from home. They were sent emails at 4 a.m. in the morning. Those who weren't impacted have software on their computer that tracks their every move, preparing AI to take their job as well. They're literally training the AI that will eliminate their position as well. Meanwhile, Meta is raking in record profits. I'm a massive, unapologetic AI enthusiast, yet this is not the future I had in mind. I wish for Meta to crash and burn. This is not the way. Literally nobody benefits from this. I don't know if I agree with that take. I mean,
that's a pretty extreme perspective of a highly negative reception. But overall, as I mentioned, the previous incident had mixed reviews, and some were actually rather positive and respecting their position and their voice. Whereas this one, not so much. There was not so much thought being put into this of wanting to be forward-looking for the organization, for efficiency, for empowerment. It was more of let's automate away a lot of this. Ultimately, maybe it's not that different, but I've read about what Meta's doing where and I've even been involved in this, where there's GoPros for construction workers so they can capture footage to train robots and how to do things, especially in the US where human labor is so expensive that people are excited to buy a $40,000 robot that can fold laundry and wash dishes.
It's interesting. Actually, I have a friend of mine he was in the business of selling these very hardened Android headsets that had these translucent goggles that you could look through, like a heads-up display. And what they were for is this was when I was in Australia, and they'd have some piece of heavy equipment out in the middle of nowhere. And there's a few old guys who knew how to maintain and fix it, but they weren't going to fly them out to these remote mining sites. And so they'd get a young guy to do it, put on the headset, call in the senior technician from halfway across Australia to talk them through, okay, turn off this valve, do this, check this, do this. And at some point, these are hazardous conditions. A robot could also do that. A robot guided by a human expert or an autonomous robot. And this is, on the one hand, it's taking away jobs. On the other hand, it's taking people out of dangerous working conditions where there's asbestos and fumes and chemicals and whatever it is. So this is just part of it. This does remind me of the shitty technology adoption curve, right? Have software on their computer that tracks every move. But if you're working for somebody and that's the tool you're using, like, it feels personal because it's a personal computer, but just, I don't know. I'm not totally against that in a work context. I don't know. What are you going to do?
Yeah, it is weird to train your replacement. That's been weird since the days of humans training other humans, or you've seen that play out where, okay, I'm being asked to teach someone how to do my job, and next thing they're doing my job and I no longer have a job. That feels weird. So you can add another layer to that where saying, oh, I'm training an algorithm to look at everything I'm doing. Obviously, if you had some kind of a ownership, and that would be so much better. Yeah, I want to automate my job so I can think at a higher level. That sounds great to me if at the end of the day, I'm still employed. And if I somehow share in the financial benefit of increasing the efficiency in that. And I think that's a really good way to frame this. And so maybe what ClickUp was doing is something near to that. It does have this kind of Hunger Games thing of there's the ones that survive and the ones that don't, but that's also part of the reality is that, okay, there's people that are be able to think at that level of going outside of their comfort zone and learning new things and thinking of how to automate the routine stuff and being able to operate at higher levels of abstraction. And there's those that don't. And I think that is a reality that we have to face. But if the company as a whole is just saying, we don't even want to think about empowering people to be more efficient and be more powerful, we just want to automate them and lay them off, and let's have them train the systems that are going to do that for them. Like, you can see how that's going to breed resentment.
Oh, for sure. And ClickUp is building a product, and not all companies are building a product. Some companies just recognize where they are in their trajectory, and they're just, okay, we're gonna milk this for as long as we can and then sell it for scrap. And maybe if you're in that company, you wouldn't expect to be empowered by your company, right? I guess it just depends on the context. But yeah. All right, let's go to the next one. I think this person has an interesting perspective. This is Zach Corman. I'm going to play about a minute of his discussion. It's an 8-minute clip. Okay, here we go. Zach Corman, new video. And again, this is not necessarily our views. I'm going to play about a minute or two of this. We're going to react in real time. I don't even think you and I are going to have the same view on this, but here we go.
Billionaire. He never asked for that, but he will accept it. When I first opened this document, my first reaction was to ask, what the fuck am I reading? And it only got worse from there. But misery loves company, so I'm going to make y'all look at this shit while I talk about it. Let's start with what Anthropic wants. In short, they want democracies to have a commanding lead on AI, according to them, which means more restrictions on sending compute to China, stopping the Chinese labs from distilling Anthropic's models, those dirty criminals, and accelerating adoption of AI in the United States. Basically, the US government should help to defeat Anthropic's competition while encouraging people to buy Anthropic's products for democracy. None of this is new. This whole not selling chips to China debate is what Jensen Huang was arguing when he said, that's a loser attitude, makes no sense to me. Anthropic knows that if China has the same computing power as the US, that'd be a real threat to Anthropic. So Anthropic doesn't want that. And the whole distilling our models thing isn't new either. Distilling a model is basically when a competitor lab makes a ton of requests to some frontier model and trains its model on that. This makes it possible to create a model that is very close in the performance to the model being copied at a fraction of the price. According to Anthropic, this is how DeepSeek was trained.
Okay, so summarize this clip. He's reacting to Anthropic. Anthropic is asking for protection from distillation attacks and more broadly being alarmist at the idea that Chinese companies, Chinese models could compete. Let's see. Do you want to go first on this one?
Sure. So yeah, Anthropic is very staunchly anti-open source, anti-open weight models. And there's things that I can appreciate about them saying of, hey, we need to incentivize US R&D and responsible stewardship of this this powerful technology. But there are also things that seem to have very misaligned incentives, which are like the conflicts of interest that this person was highlighting, where they're essentially asking for a bailout. They're asking for financial support, legal support, logistical support to squash competition and to encourage use of their product and solution. And this is why, even if you're trying to say, hey, in the name of democracy, in the name of US interests and capitalism, we want to protect our society, like this is not a capitalist perspective. This is not a free market attitude. This is why Jensen said that's a loser attitude. Like if you're trying to restrict open competition and open models from being shared freely, then you're trying to amass power and you're trying to restrict and control use. And when you amplify that with this perspective or attitude of we're going to decide who uses our models and we're going to decide how they use our models, which are two things that they absolutely do. They've shown with their subscription models and they've shown with Mythos that they're control freaks when it comes to their technology. This is a very dystopian to think about one company having all this power, having all these protections, having all these subsidies and incentives from the government, and then having the criteria to choose who gets to use their AI and how they get to use it. That is, to me, not very aligned with a free and open democratic society with a free market and ability to choose from different things and freedom of choice in how they will apply the tools that are available to them.
Yeah, that's a really neat analysis. And I think we're leaning in basically the same directions. My take on this is the whole distillation attack vector. There's nothing you can do. That's HD DVD, right? If you want anybody to be able to use your model, then yes, eventually they can keep asking it questions until they can get an idea of what's inside. That's just, you can't do anything about that. And so the cat is out of the bag. Mm-hmm. I like the idea. I'm a patriotic person. I like the idea of there's times in my life for certain products, okay, I'll try and find the American or the EU version of it before I'm going to, partially from a quality perspective. And I understand that mm-hmm. sentiment. At the same time, I think the way to be the best is just to be the best. Yeah. It's not to put down everyone else. Yeah. At the end of the day, you got to be the best, right? You can be the best by hiding stuff and trying to make it top secret. And I think within national security or national defense, there's a place for that. Mm-hmm. But in general, if you want to be the best.
Not by squashing competition. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. We can share a stick of butter. And yeah, I get a lot of use out of the Chinese models.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that works. All right. In terms of timing, we have to move somewhat quickly over the next two. Here, we'll do this one quickly. GGUF quantization. This was a vLLM. Yeah. Migrate GGUF quantization. So GGUF is one of the ways of taking a big model, making it smaller so you can run it on smaller hardware. If you look at the local Llama subreddit, a lot of people are using GGUF to run smaller versions of Kimi or DeepSeek on your cluster of RTX 3090s or whatever you've got. So why is this a story?
So this is the predominant format by Unsloth, who makes these dynamic quants where they selectively quantize specific layers while other critical layers are left unquantized, and allows them to create amazing high quality versions of these open weight models in a form factor that will run on consumer GPUs. So vLLM has been the premier inference server and has been used by a lot of commercial enterprise inference providers, but has also been used by hobbyists and it has been used for local inference on kind of prosumer or consumer hardware. And I have used it. I've spun up machines with 1 or 8 H200s back when I had Nebius credits. And this is a major kind of enterprise product. It's not a toy, but I've been recommending it to people that want to run models on their laptops because it is more performant than Llama. But they said, hey, you know what? These GGUFs, they kind of underperform on vLLM. So we're going to deprecate support for them. We'll relegate them to a plugin, to an extension. And obviously, this has mixed reception. It's okay, I guess we're not going to be able to run vLLM locally, and is creating this dichotomy. So for me, it was a kind of a big deal because the thing that I was most excited about as an inference server for local use, and increasingly that boundary between what is local and what is a Mac Studio with 512 megs of unified memory versus what is a machine that I can spin up for $20 an hour. But yeah, so this is definitely a hit for my view on vLLM.
All right, we're going to keep going. But that was an interesting one. So for local inference, definitely be aware of this. Maybe look into vLLM alternatives or install a plugin, whatever you need to do. Okay, next one. This is interesting. This one you brought to my attention, so I'll let you introduce this one. $100,000 grant. This guy, 0x0. Why is this a story?
So this guy's been vocal on X for a while as a kind of a one-man army to do exactly this kind of local model serving and creating versions of local models that are quantized or that are optimized or that are adapted in certain ways that they'll run on consumer hardware. And this is not easy stuff. And there's very little incentive to do this, right? It's almost like a labor of love. You don't have the big labs doing this. It's not in their interest to allow people to run models locally. So you have to have research institutions or organizations like Unsloth and or Hugging Face that work with the ecosystem. So the idea that one man is going on a crusade to dedicate himself to do this for the good of all as a public benefit action is heartwarming. And this guy came from a troubled past. He's not from an academic background, but he just decided to give it his all with a lot of passion. And he put out this public call for, hey, I wish I had some GPUs. I could do so much more good if I had some resources. I just don't have the resources. And he set up a crowd fund, and all kinds of support came in from many people. And then he even got some big names like NVIDIA and got some big donors up to 100 grand. I think this guy's received between $500,000 and $1 million worth of resources. So it's just pretty impressive.
That's pretty cool that in this age of digital everything, agent everything, is a very human story. And to see that it's still, I think it's possible now more than ever to be a one-person shop that changes things. So check this out, follow this person. I've noticed there's a Twitter login issue at the moment. So as soon as I can log back in, I'm going to follow 0x0. Okay, next one. This is a story about Bitcoin. Now, this one actually near and dear to my heart in a different way. I'll tell you about this one. So this guy, Claude, just cracked this person's Bitcoin wallet. They had, it's funny, holy fucking shit, OMG, Claude just cracked this. Thank you, Anthropic. Dare Emide naming my kid after you. So what happened is this person had some Bitcoin, 5 Bitcoin, which is worth a hell of a lot.
You can click on that post that he quoted from 2023.
Yeah, here we go. Okay, so this is blockchain adder. Okay, so this is their Bitcoin. They've moved it out of the wallet. Let's see.
Yes. I meant the X post. It's a quote tweet.
Oh, I see. Here we go. My wallet locked from 9 years ago. Bitcoin address.
So yeah, he posted this on 2023. Crying emojis. Look, I've got a locked wallet. 3 years later, he cracked it.
Well, and looking at the technicalities of this, it's about that Kiro bug or the Kiro versus open hands bug that I'm going to publish a blog post about soon. But basically, it was nothing super technical about it, but it was just the persistence of an AI agent. Just keep looking, keep digging, keep moving things together. Look at this old backup file. Try this here. That solved it. One of my close childhood friends, he's got 100 Bitcoin locked in a wallet. And it's been very difficult for him to deal with this. And they psychologically think if you have enough money to retire beautifully for the rest of your life, and it's in this file that you don't have the password to, that's a tough thing to deal with. Yeah. And so, I can see, when I saw this story, I kind of hoped it was him. So this is I'm glad that AI has this like persistence, and that's what I like about AI. It doesn't have to be the smartest, most genius model. It just has to keep trying. I mean,
yeah, and
it's
you
like
know, to be clear, this wasn't like a brute force attack, but it was like he threw a backup of an entire computer at it and said, here, have at it, explore this computer. And somewhere on the computer, he found a file that had some passphrase, and then that passphrase worked for some other thing, and then that other thing unlocked that thing. So it was like several hops of reasoning away, and it was able to come to a solution.
Yeah, it's cool. So I guess this is heartwarming. I was hoping it was my friend. It's not. I should give that guy a call. He's at a rough time. All right. Next article. This is the last one we've got for today. This is hilarious. Okay. This is a person who is an excellent troll and said, I just generated an image in the style of a Monet painting using AI. Please describe in as much detail as possible what makes this inferior to a real Monet painting. The thing is, this is actually a Monet painting. This is a real Monet painting. People and have all sorts of criticism. The brush strokes aren't as precise, less subtle variation, wouldn't hold up at a real museum, can't distinguish plant reflections and submerged plants, combining tokens. People have very sophisticated criticisms of this. There's no cohesion to the depth and color choices. The reflection of the tree blends into the lily pads. No regard for spatial depth contrast. So this is an actual Claude Monet. This is worth a lot. This fooled a lot of people. Here, I'm going to switch tabs for a second. This is a Fortune article here. 6.7 million people thought they were ripping apart an AI-generated Monet painting, but it was real. This is great. So how did you come across this one?
So I am in a bunch of communities that I met in LA Tech Week in the creative industries, and they mostly work in AI-driven content creation. And so, yeah, this came up on their radar because there's a lot of anti-AI sentiment in the creative communities. And there's this feeling that, you know, anything that is produced with AI is inferior. And part of it is trying to distinguish between slop and not slop on the basis of effort and quality. And people are saying, if you use it, requires effort, just like agentic engineering. It is not a one prompt vibe coded thing, and it produces quality. It's not just junk. But people are still resistant to both of those things, that these are tools that can require skill and effort to use correctly, and that they can produce things of high quality. So there's an inherent bias that...
Jump on the Midjourney Discord and see how people have been like on the one hand, you just type stuff into ChatGPT, get into Midjourney and look at all the different prompts and parameters and all the experiments that people are doing. And it's another tool to make something in your mind, something on a 2D plane.
Yeah, I read somewhere that's an interesting part of Midjourney's evolution was that it originally was only available via Discord where anybody could see your prompt. And that allowed people to learn from each other and to see what was required to use these things correctly. So the upshot of all this, I think there's two takeaways. One is art itself can be very subjective. It's what makes something a good piece of art. That's something that I feel like there's people way more qualified than me to speak eloquently on that. I feel like I don't really get it to some degree. It's not my field. But the other thing is this bias. There's so much bias in here. These people are convinced that this thing is inferior, that they'll invent all kinds of things.
I wanted to share this tab, which I think encapsulates this. I think you are as good of an art judge as any other person. I think it's a bunch of gatekeeping. So I'm going to share that. So there's lots of different explanations of this. You see this with wine. There's this famous violinist who went and played at the subway, but dressed like a homeless person. He was playing on a $2 million Stradivarius, and people just walked right by him. Right, but the same people might pay thousands of dollars to see him that night at Carnegie Hall. So,
hey, you've even seen it with code, where people are rejecting these bot PRs, saying this is AI slop. That is okay. How do you distinguish high quality, handcrafted, organic code from bot code?
Could be handcrafted organic slop. All right. Well, that ends this episode for today. Thank you so much for being here. We've got more news next week. Follow us on our Substack, on our LinkedIn. Join our Discord. The links are all below. And submit us any stories you want us to cover for the next week. We'll make sure that we do that. All right. Have a good one. Take care, everyone.
Bye.